Hey everyone, it's Steve Check and Taylor McGuire here from Empyrean Technology, where we ask you to entrust us to manage your IT so you can work at managing your business. Welcome again to our 2022 webinar series, where we've planned throughout the year to discuss various topics throughout the year to help you make good decisions with your IT and with running your business. If you missed out on previous webinars, we have them available on our website, and I think the link's on the screen there. And if you have trouble with that, just reach out to us. We're happy to provide you links or help you get access to them. As you know, if you've been taking part of these webinars, we've talked a lot about cybersecurity, cyber insurance. These have been topics that have been beaten to death. And we thought today we would just take a little bit of a turn of sidetrack here and show you how easy it can be to recover from a disaster, utilizing a preferred backup and disaster recovery system, which is provided by Datto. And many of you in the call here today are familiar with that offering. As you know, Datto, we recommend Datto's BDRs, a preferred business continuity product. And whether you have a server failure, natural disaster, or even a cyber event, recovery is really straightforward and timely, and that's what we hope to show you today. So welcome to our partners from Datto. Our agenda today is really about a 30 to 40 minute presentation. We're gonna have some time for a Q&A, prize draw, and you need to be present in order to be successful at the prize draw. If you have any questions during the presentation, really encourage you just to put those in the chat, and we'll do our very best to make sure we address the questions. So without further ado, Taylor, I'll pass it over to you to introduce our topic and our speakers, and take it away.
Yeah, I think you've already covered the topic. So we do have a prize draw, which we're going to do at the end of the call. And basically we'll be sending out an email with a copy of the recording and naming the winners. Our guest is Desiree Thomas from Datto, Lauren Goldwyn, and Tulsi. Tulsi is going to actually do the disaster demonstration for us. So we're really excited about that. So take it away, Des.
Awesome, cool. Let me just steal the screen sharing. All right, thanks so much for having me, guys. My name is Desiree Thomas. Thanks for that warm introduction. I'm coming to you from good old Calgary, Alberta, and we got Tulsi who's going to be presenting from Tulsi. You're in Toronto, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
still great city of Toronto.
You still got a lot of snow?
Oh, you guys from the West love that, don't you?
We got to make fun because everyone watching here is from Vancouver, so they don't get the snow or the cold. So we got to make fun of somebody. Thank you so much for joining the presentation today. I really want to set up the conversation first of why this disaster recovery conversation is so important. To introduce you to Datto as a company, there's a good chance you might have never heard of us before. And that isn't because we haven't been around. We've been around since 2007, but we work in this really cool middle ground where we help companies like Emporium to with the products and services they need to support you guys. So you guys can keep up and running no matter what happens around you. And let's face it, there's a ton of cyber threats. If you haven't even heard of ransomware, you're really, really lucky because unfortunately ransomware has been hitting the news on an almost daily basis across the US and Canada and the world over the last little bit. We look at massive attacks like the major US fuel. When the attack started hitting gas and oil, and then all of a sudden it starts hitting your steak and your beef and all those horrible things, massive attacks that are happening, and it really made sure that the government has started to taking notice. And what happens when these attacks happen? Not only your systems going down, but think about the cost of downtime within your business. When I was doing some research and thinking about poor, good old BC, a lovely Vancouver, I love you guys so much, but cost of downtime was something that you guys had to deal with really, really recently in the last 6 months or so, when businesses were getting shut down because of the floods, and shut down for not just a day, not even just a week, like businesses were really getting shut down. And let's face it, we're all under attack, every single one of us. Top industries all the way down, mom and dad pop enterprise or mom and dad pop shops, little tiny businesses, all the way to healthcare, government, municipalities, technology providers, professional services. There's a ton of money to be made for the bad guys, and that's why you guys are being targeted. Across the board, industries are being targeted because cyber criminals recognize the fact that you've spent how much time? What, 80 hours a week probably working for yourself, so you don't have to spend 40 hours a week working for somebody else. You spend so much time growing your business to be where you want it to be. The bad guys recognize that if you're spending that much time in your business, you're probably going to spend money to get your information back if and when that's showed up. You hold a ton of information, and that provides an opportunity for the bad guys to steal and then try to get you guys to pay money. It's sensitive information. Unfortunately, a lot of small to medium-sized businesses don't offer or don't actually recognize the threats of why cybersecurity conversations are so important. Where's your information hosted? By the end of this, hopefully we'll know, you'll book a meeting and you'll know where your information is hosted. But right now, do you know where your information is hosted? Maybe you were one of those businesses that was affected by the floods, and if your information was hosted in your location, it could have easily been washed away. There's a lot of different obligations depending on your business, whether that be HIPAA or PII or PHI. So there's information and security measures that you have to keep on top of as a business. Now let's talk about how often these attacks actually even happen. I want to cover some statistics. Some of these are kind of interesting. I just really like keeping these in mind whenever I'm having these conversations. 43% of all cyber attacks are aimed at small to medium-sized businesses. Small to medium-sized businesses are running the world around us. So that is, of course, you guys are under attack. 85% of email attachments are harmful. I think about that poor HR person. Things are picking up. People are hiring. There's a lot of opportunities, especially in the remote workforce. So your HR people are getting a ton of emails. And if 85% of all email attachments are harmful, well, that poses a pretty significant risk. 91% of attacks are launched from a phishing campaign. Cybercrime will cost 10.5 trillion by 2025. And I've done this presentation over years and years, and that number is easily doubling and tripling year on year. 24,000 new malicious apps are removed from the App Store daily. Ransomware is up only from Q3 of 2021 alone, 140%. Q3, just Q3 of 2021 alone, it jumped up that much. And then keeping in mind, a business is hit with ransomware every 13 seconds. So it's not a matter of if this is going to happen. This is happening. We see it across the board all the time. It's about what are you going to do when this happens to you. So let's touch on the evolution of cyber threats. Who were these bad guys? We talk about ransomware developers. Well, of course, if these bad guys are making a ton of money, that's going to continue. We see that over $20 billion as damages in 2022 alone. Insider threats within your business. Who has access and controls? If somebody leaves your company, are you able to track exactly what information they have access to or have access to after they leave? Hopefully you do, because that poses your business a significant risk. Organized crime. Of course, the bad guys are always one on a piece of the pie. Nation state. Unfortunately, there's countries around the world who recognize they just don't like Canada or the US and want to steal information from us. And then IoT, especially in this remote workforce, IoT hackers and devices are really important to have a security conversation around. Who has access to that information? How are people connecting through your network? When they're VPing in, is Bobby's son, Joe, and Susie, are they actually allowed to VPN in and connect? Because we've heard of attacks happening just by the kids connecting to things that they didn't necessarily would think would pose a risk, but it happens. And let's face it, the bad guys, they're actually attacking in pretty unsophisticated ways, whether that be just brute force. How many different ways can they try at once? And is someone's password weak? Is somebody within the business using the same password as password? That still happens all the time. 2FA, if you're not using 2FA, that's another huge risk within your business. Phishing attacks still happen, and they're getting more and more advanced, where they could sitting and knowing you're going on vacation, they know you're going on vacation, and if you have the controls to message somebody and say, hey, I'm on vacation, can you send me this check? Chances are the bad guys know that, and they might be using that as a phishing scam. But let's face it, we're your greatest risk. We're the people that we want to talk security, but maybe we weren't listening. We attended the different things that you told us to listen to, and you told us to pretend to pay attention, but we just pretended to pay attention. And we do things that we're not paying attention to. So we click buttons, we click those links that we're not supposed to link. We're supposed to hover above, but we didn't do it. And so next thing you know, you get hit with ransomware. So Do you have a backup solution? But even one step further, because it's not about backing up, it's about making sure you have a continuity solution. Is your data, you're probably, okay, we learned from the floods to make sure that our data isn't in one place. So we wanted to make sure to move our data into the cloud. But it's not just about that. It's about making sure that you can be up and running no matter what happens at any point in time. Because let's face it, not only are these fires and floods and disasters and people being your greatest risk, but ransomware is running rampant. So we're doing something about it. We are providing you with business continuity. We're making sure that your critical systems, whether it be those virtual infrastructures or your physical production streams, are being backed up every 5 minutes into the cloud on an offsite replication. And then with that, you have your screenshot verification, which is an awesome tool to make sure that every single one of those backups are tested. They're up and running. Guess what? If that backup gets hit with ransomware, it's tested and it's up and running. And we know that you can be back up and running in a second. We restore, we restore from a local appliance, and then we're taking that backup into the cloud and not backing it up just once, but in 2 different locations. So if Calgary, where one of our data centers is, actually gets hit with another flood, well, we still have your information backed up in a separate location. So you can be back up and running at any point in time. Your information is secure. If something happens, you can be back up and running. Say that ransomware, that button that we weren't supposed to click, that email that we should have hovered over, but guess Friday, it's busy. We're on the go. We have so many things going on. We click a button. Well, now we can instantly virtualize, be back up and running to the previous version, and reducing that downtime, making sure that you have your backups both local and in the cloud, and really helping that so you have a superior RTO and RPO. What's that? Your recovery time objective and your recovery point objective. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but really thinking it's not just about how often you're backing up in your information, but how quickly you can be back up and running. Because let's face it, if it takes you 2 weeks to get back up and running, that's 2 weeks of work that your business is going to struggle to survive during. So let's see how this works. We're going to go into a full demo of this. Tulsi, not me, he's much smarter than I am. But first, I want to talk about continuity for all of your information, all your solutions you're using. So what about SaaS protection? Thinking about Google, think about Microsoft. Why are those conversations so important? Well, as always, we're your greatest risk. We clicked on something we shouldn't have. There's a lot of data loss going to be used by malicious people who know they're leaving their office before you do. So then maybe they're taking their entire sales funnels with them, or viruses and hackers, or just by people being nice and hiding and cleaning things up and deleting files and folders that they maybe shouldn't have deleted. Well, Google's got you, right? No. In those SLAs that we clicked, yes, I agreed. I clicked the terms and conditions. I read all of those by the second. I agree. Both Google and Microsoft state in their SLAs that you need to be using a third-party supplier. And if you're not, they're not responsible for any data loss. So even if they have an outage and it's 0.00001%, guess what? That's happened to our clients. And with using our Datto SaaS backup, we were able to get them back up and running in a matter of moments. Both of these solutions have their shared responsibility model. They say what they're responsible for, say hardware, software, natural disasters, and what you're responsible for, human error. We're always your greatest risk, external threats. There's a lot of reasons why using a backup SaaS provider, just imagine if you lost all of those right today. Could you continue to do your job? With Datto SaaS protection, it's unlimited storage, quick and easy setup, and then it can scale no matter where you are. 2-person mom and dad pop shop, all the way to enterprise. We have a solution. So I promise we talk about considering your cost, your downtime within your business. Tulsi's going to hop on right here in a second. So think about this while he's going through the presentation. There, the average cost of downtime is 486% jumps in 2018. That's just the cost of downtime. How long does it take to get your business up and running? If you're not sure what your hourly cost of downtime to your business is, we've got a quick questionnaire, 10 simple questions, 6 current data storage questions, and 4 state of the business. At the end of this, you can actually sit down and say, as a business owner, hey, I know if my business is down for 1 hour, it's going to cost me $5,000, 2 hours, $10,000, so on and so forth. Now, how does the being able to sleep at night and having a solution that'll help you be up and running in a matter of seconds fit into that? And with that, Tulsi, I'll hand it off to you.
All right. Excellent. You did it in record time. So let me share my screen here, everyone. And I really want to actually focus in on a couple of things here. Which screen I want to share?
I think it's the one with the computer stuff on it. Am I right?
It is not quite giving me the screen. So let's try this. Let's try my remote desktop here. All right. I imagine what you're looking right now is a desktop with documents, and there's some PDFs showcasing here. So hopefully you're seeing that on your end as well.
Yeah.
All right. So echoing something what Des was talking about in terms of spear phishing, malware, all of that sort of bit. The sort of day and age that we live in today, doesn't matter who you are. You're going to be getting this stuff. You're going to be getting it on your phones. You're going to be getting it in your emails. If in the last little while, the sort of great resignation have make it a very ample way for adversaries to actually make their way into organizations. Everybody's going on LinkedIn and posting that, hey, I got a new job. And this actually becomes a very interesting way for adversaries to look at that sort of details and say, well, I can actually reach out to that HR person or the accounts payable person within the organization and, pretend to be that employee, or vice versa. I can actually pretend to be the HR person or the accounts payable person and reach out to that employee in question here and ask them to, make some changes or allow me access into a system. And we have seen that in numerous examples that actually came up in the last few months, whereby employees are being tricked to install things like VPN clients on a network. You have somebody pretending to be the IT admin, and all of a sudden you have adversaries now living on the network without being detected for a while. And that's usually enough time for them to actually install whatever tools that they need to exfiltrate data, to actually gain persistence. And a lot of times, again, as end users, we will not be aware of that because we don't think much of it, right? Somebody in IT have the same sort of name as, Bob or Joe in IT is actually reaching out to us. And we really don't think much of it after that point. So it doesn't really matter how an adversary gets their data or gets their ransomware or the payload on your system. I mean, there's multiple delivery means. They can actually use emails. They can actually use other sort of clever social engineering tactics. Years ago, we actually dropped off a ton of USB thumb drives at a trade show, and we were surprised the number of folks that actually took those USB thumb drives and plugged it into their laptops. So the means in terms of actually getting an exploit out there in a while is certainly ever changing. Now, on my system here, I got a bit of an exploit sitting, and this is not a ransomware that is going to be coming back to a nation state. I actually nullify it, but I want to actually demonstrate a point whereby, at least to show you what this looks like, because chances are, if you haven't personally been infected by ransomware, you might not have seen, how these things behave. To actually prove to a point, I mean, these are actual, legit files on my system. So if I come in here and say I want to actually open this PDF document, for instance, we can actually see, that's legit. That's one of the Datto data sheets here. I'm going to go ahead and close this. But if I open, my special little invoice here, you probably can actually begin seeing what it's actually doing. It began changing all of those files on my machine. So as those files become encrypted and the ransomware is working through these ways, a couple of things that we're going to want to pay attention to. One, of course, there's a ticking time bomb. There's a clock. They want to actually create pain that you have a limited window in terms of actually paying that. The other sort of thing is, I mean, your typical sort of Bitcoin wallet here, right? I would say about 5 years ago, accessing Bitcoins was a little more difficult. Today, across maybe the street corner from where some of you live, there might be a Bitcoin facility that you can actually access. It's almost like, ABM these days. But the goal is, I mean, it might be a very small amount that they're asking. They might be asking you for maybe a couple $1,000s to release your data. There's no guarantee that you will actually get your data back. The second bit is what we have noticed with organizations who have went ahead and paid a ransomware, they are posed for reinfection because, hey, whatever you had on your machine was valuable enough for the first time for you to actually pay the ransomware. If we infect you a second time, chances are you might actually pay again. And we have noticed that over and over, whereby victims get, reinfected. So at this point, without having a continuity solution, your choices are very simple, right? If you have backups on maybe tapes, you have backups on USB, maybe you have backups in the cloud somewhere, you need to rebuild a system because you have lost confidence in it. There might be other sort of droppers hiding on this machine. The moment you try to restore it, it gets itself reinfected. The second bit is, the time it takes you to actually rebuild, said system. And this is going back down to the recovery calculator that was showcasing earlier. And the whole idea in terms of that is, if it's going to be taking you, several days, maybe even weeks to actually rebuild, a single system or multiple system within your organization, that what really affects you is the downtime, is a loss of trust with the clients that you're working with, and other sort of, I would say third-party organizations you generally might be doing business with. So knowing that this is going to take you time, what's your choices at that point? If it's a critical system, you have to send your employees home. In some organizations, they believe it or not, they went back to traditional paper and pen. Somebody come through the door requesting an order, you actually take a note and you actually get back to them. That certainly is not the way that we have to in this sort of day and age for you to do business in, because that costs you. You cannot take an order, you cannot fulfill an obligation. Your competitors are a click away. So with that said, let me show you how easy it is to actually restore from that point. One of the main ideas, why folks actually invest within Datto is just that bit. And whenever you're actually taking backups with us, I'm going to actually show you a couple of bit of previews here before we restore the system, because that's very fast. Anytime we are actually protecting your machines, your critical assets, those line of business systems, your systems of records, your systems of information, we ultimately want to be able to not only say we actually do a very good job backing them up, but really prove that in the event of, said scenario was to arise, we have 100% confidence we can actually recover the data set. The screen that you're seeing here in the small thumbnail within this view is the actual backup data. The appliance in this case, this is a system that we're going to have on site protecting the data set, will test and verify that data on a daily basis. And this is completely automated. We want to be able to actually test, when the backup was done, was the actual various drives include? Is there signs of ransomware in the data? Is there other sort of content that might be malicious sitting on that data set? We ultimately want to actually get visibility into all of those items. Second to this as well, we certainly want to be able to actually give you control of the system. And that is actually done through this portal. So I'm just going to hop over here right now and actually do a bit of a restore. So if I actually come in here and I pop into that machine that I actually just ran somewhere, I'm able to pick that system, 4:04 p.m. today, and said I want to actually start restore. So at this point, we can quickly put the machine back on the network, because that's what the intent here. We want to actually ensure our users and employees that within the organization can continue accessing those important files and the applications. And by the way, because we need to now do a bit of a forensic investigation to understand where did that adversary came from, how did they even get into our network to begin with, we might be running off the Datto appliance for maybe several hours, maybe several days, even weeks, while that investigation might be happening. So we also have the ability, this sort of rescue agent bit is for us to actually continue taking backups, and that's quite important. Now, at this point, what our device is going to be doing is simply taking us back in time, right? The goal here is to go back, an hour or 30 minutes or 50 minutes, depends on how long ago that sort of backup was done, and almost time travel us, prior to the incident, and resume the critical business system. And that word it's quite important, and I'm going to underscore that a second time. The reason folks actually invest in continuity they want to be able to actually resume the critical business applications, the critical business systems that they have locally on their network, or they certainly can do that in our data center as well. And that's one of the prime advantage you actually have when you standardize on a technology like us. So you can experience a fire or flood. That's terrible. But if the impact of your systems and it might actually put you out of business, that is actually worse. We want to be able to actually take those systems that is critical to you and resume those mission critical systems in our data center. And how fast you actually saw it happen here on my local systems, we can certainly do that within minutes to the hours as well within the data center and ensure that there's access to the critical workload. So users that might be working at home, they can actually come through into accessing those systems via VPN. If the office is still working, we can actually tie your local firewalls with the systems. So people can continue using the traditional VPN that might be on their machine and access the workload. It is just running in a completely different facility, if that might be the scenario. But at this point, I mean, we have a machine up and running. I can come in here and say I want to actually log into that system. This is a smaller sort of console view, but it's going to illustrate the point here. If I go ahead and log in into the system, I mean, my expectation here is to be before the ransomware event, right? So here we are, prior to that ransomware event, the machine is actually right back up on the network, and, other folks can actually use it. And, at this point, I can continue accessing those PDF files and whatever the case might be if I require access to those things. But, all in all, I mean, that really took us a few minutes while I'm having a conversation with you. But knowing the sort of team that is here to actually assist you guys and walk you through this, investing in something like the Datto BC appliance, you actually now equip yourself with an extremely powerful tool to help mitigate ransomware, to help mitigate things like a bad patch, help mitigate things like a failed server where you need to actually now order that from Dell or HP or one of the big vendors. And it might take you 2 weeks. It might actually take you 2 months or 4 months, depends on what's happening with the supply chain in this day and age. It is ultimately putting resiliency within your organization so you can actually resume your business. With that said, I'm mindful of the time. I will actually pass things back to you, Des.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I think, Taylor, I think what you told me, what you just told everyone there is they're allowed to click anything that they want and they're going to be all good, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Taylor, what do you think?
The great thing about Datto is that it's there when you need it. In a perfect world, prevention is ideal, right? And so we want to look at things like putting two-factor authentication on your Office 365 accounts. Any kind of remote access should have two-factor authentication. Security training, so that's something that we provide for clients. We'll actually get your staff together on a webinar or in an office, do a lunch and learn, and we'll sit down with you and kind of educate you on some of the things you need to watch out for and look out for. So that's all stuff that we can help you with. So prevention is always number one. But it's really comforting to know that we've got a product like Datto in place, basically where we can kind of get people back up and running when we need to. So
yeah, I'm just curious. I don't see any questions in the chat here. I don't know if there are questions from people at all. I think the one key point that you guys might want to action on is taking a look at the recovery time calculator. I think that'd be very interesting for some of you to take a look at that, and maybe that's something we can include a link to in the email we sent out after the fact or something. I think that would be good. And then I think Taylor and I would both love to have conversation. If you have questions, you want to dig into current state versus maybe what you're doing now versus what you could be doing, I think that would be a good conversation. So yeah, thanks a lot for that, guys. I'll watch, see what if anything pops up in the chat here.
Yeah, we actually just had someone, Ryan just mentioned, absolutely love our Datto. It saved us when one of our servers went down. So
thanks, Ryan.
Testimony from Ryan here on the call. Yeah, well, I think we'll wrap up. I'm going to take the recording and put it online and send out a copy of that along with the results of the contest winners. So we'll send that out here as soon as possible, and I'll also include that link for the downtime calculator.
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Well-
Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Desiree, Lauren, Tulsi,
Thank-
everybody who's joined today. Thanks for joining us. And hopefully that email will also have some information about our next webinar next month as well. So thanks a lot for taking some time out of your day. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Sure. Bye.